I don't do people. See, I'm the friend who asks, who all over there? And who else is coming? As my RSVP. Truthfully, I am a really private and deeply introverted person. And I know that sounds like a contradiction coming from someone with a podcast, but my introversion doesn't mean I don't know how to show up. Because when I'm out, I'm out. And we're going to have a good time, and I'm going to be fully present in the moment. But what you don't see is that on the inside, my social battery is depleting faster than an old iPhone when a new one just came out. And I'm giving myself pep talks to stay in the moment and not retreat. And for a long time, I convinced myself that this was just who I was: introverted, private, independent. And all those things are true. But what I had to get honest about is that me being an introvert wasn't the real reason I was running from this thing the church likes to call community. It was just the most acceptable excuse I had. Can we talk about it? Hey, y'all. I'm Seneca, and this is Exhaled Hope, where we have real conversations about faith in the middle of the mess. No hype, no guilt, no pretending like we have it all together. Just truth that leaves us with real hope. What happens at our house stays at our house. You don't tell everyone your business. Everybody is not your friend. In my house growing up, these phrases were standard. They were shared as words of love and protection. But what I know now is that while they were said with good intentions, it's bad theology. And let me be clear, this is not a slight against my mother. She gave me the best she had and understood in the moment. But what those words inadvertently taught me was that I couldn't trust anyone with what was really going on in my life. That real friends were like needles in haystacks. They were rare, hard to find, and not worthy of the back pain of bending over trying to find one. For someone who already preferred to be alone, those words became permission, a green light, if you will, and I hit the gas. They became the blueprint of a 12-foot thick cement wall around my heart, my life, my fears, my wins, and my wounds. So that by the time community started showing up, in friendships, in church, anywhere, it didn't feel like an invitation. It felt like a threat. And here's the question for all of us. Where did your wall come from? Because most of us have one, and most of us didn't build it out of nowhere. If we're honest, most of us have run from community. Problem is, that's not the example we've been given, because we see community woven all the way through from Genesis to Revelation, and not the pretty, polished kind. This kind is the kind that happens in the middle of impossible, inconvenient, unimaginable circumstances. You know, the in the middle of the mess we talk about on this very podcast. Let's think about Mary. Mary finds out she's pregnant, miraculously, unexplainably pregnant. And the first thing she does is run to Elizabeth. She doesn't hide. She doesn't figure it out alone first. She goes straight to her community. And she says, look at what God just did to my life. In the middle of something she couldn't fully explain, she found someone who could hold it with her. Then there's David and Jonathan. Their friendship was not convenient. Family loyalty was on the line. There was political landmines everywhere. One of them was living with death threats. And their friendship held through it all. Because real community isn't built during the easy seasons. It's proven during the hard ones. And then, this is the one that had me stop and had to get my life together. The first church. See, in Acts, it doesn't just say they went to church together and hung out. It says they devoted themselves to fellowship, to breaking bread. It says they went house to house. And when I sat down with that thing, I realized at that point in time in my life, I could count on one hand the number of people in my life who knew my home address. You can't break bread with people you won't let in. I had to ask myself, what was I really afraid of? And the answer was that I was afraid of being fully seen and unaccepted. Because in my head, community, especially the church version, looked like people being all up in your business without being all in your corner. It looked like someone highlighting everything you did wrong and handing you a scripture without the adhesive of love to hold the bandage on. It looked like being corrected in the middle of your mess instead of being supported through it. So I kept people at a distance. Not because I didn't want connection, but because I thought that's what connection cost. And I wasn't willing to pay it. Card decline, bank overdraft, whatever you need to call it, I just wasn't paying it. But what I've had to learn, and honestly what I'm still learning, is that what I was running from wasn't community. It was a counterfeit version of it at best. And the fact that I experienced this counterfeit doesn't mean that the real thing doesn't exist. Okay, so there are these two women in the Bible. You may know them, Naomi and her daughter-in-law, Ruth. Naomi had lost her husband. Then she lost both of her sons, which included Ruth's husband. Naomi decided she was leaving a foreign land to go back home, to a home she wasn't even sure she had anything left there for her. She was grieving, she was empty, and she told Ruth, hey, girl, go back, go home. You still have life ahead of you, go live it. But Ruth said, nah. Ruth declined. She said, where you go, I'ma go. Where you die, that's where I'ma die. And Naomi wasn't at her best. She had nothing to offer. And Ruth still chose her. And I think that this is a lesson for all of us, to know that we don't have to be put together for the right people to choose us. We don't have to be through the first 6 therapy sessions before we're eligible to be seen and loved by the right community and friendships. The community God designs doesn't ask you to arrive whole. It meets you in whatever version of you is available. Honestly, Naomi did what a lot of us have done. She tried to send Ruth away multiple times. She gave her several outs, even prayed that Ruth would find a new husband and a new life. That wasn't her being an evil mother-in-law. That was Naomi saying, my mess is too heavy, too stinky, too much, and I don't want to become your burden. Y'all, I have been so guilty of this. And honestly, I still struggle with it. And I know it annoys my village. Hey, y'all, pray for me. Because when hard times come, my first instinct is to pull back. Not to be difficult, but because I don't want my issues to become someone else's headache. Because if we're honest, sometimes what we call independence is really just self-protection dressed up. And here's what this story showed me, and I hope you see it as well. If Ruth had left when Naomi was pushing her away, she would have missed the blessing that God had already designated for her. The very thing Naomi prayed she'd find. She almost walked away from her blessing because the person she was committed to kept handing her an exit. But don't miss your Ruth because you keep showing her the door. The other truth we have to settle into is that community doesn't always look like what we expect. I would have never imagined that my community would look like what it does today. When I think about my starting lineup in my crew, I was around these women in some way, shape, or form for years before our individual relationships actually began. And what's even funnier is that they all started during my no new friends era. I was cool and good with what I had, or so I thought. But then we look at Ruth, because she was an outsider. She had a different background, different upbringing, different everything. And from a textbook perspective, these weren't her people, but she chose them anyway. Maybe we miss our community because we're too busy looking for something familiar, or we're blocking anything new because we're comfortable with what we already have. We're looking for friendships that feel like what we used to have and missing the person God has placed right in front of us. Don't miss them. Where you go, I'm going. Where you die, I will die. How many of y'all have said that to your friends? See, this was not a casual friendship. And it's crazy to me because what was Ruth actually gaining by staying? Because at the time, she didn't know about Boaz. She didn't know she was walking toward her husband. She had no idea what was on the other side of that commitment. She just stayed. And sis was committed. Because here's the thing. And I'm going to hold your hand when I say this because it stung me at first, so it might sting a little bit. But most of what we call community is actually just convenience. People who are easy to be around when life is good, when seasons align, when showing up costs you nothing. But Ruth redefines what it means to choose someone. And she quietly asks each of us, am I offering covenant to the person in my life? Or am I only offering company? There is a difference. And we owe it to ourselves to evaluate which one we're actually giving. So when Naomi was finally getting back to Bethlehem, she does something that is so interesting to me because I think we've all done it. She tries to change her own identity. She tells the people, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. Now that's interesting because Mara means bitter, the complete opposite of what Naomi means, which is sweet, pleasant, delightful. And she did what so many of us do. She named herself after her condition, her situation, her feelings in that moment. She was grieving. She was feeling empty, and she let that become her identity. She renamed herself after something temporary. But before the story closed, her community wasn't having it. They gathered around her. They pulled her out of the mud. They reminded her of the love surrounding her and wouldn't let her build a permanent house in her pain. They called her back to who she actually was. And here's the hope. The right community won't just survive the valley with you. They will be standing there when you succeed beyond what you imagined. And when your memory starts to fade on how far you've come, they'll remember for you. I want to be clear about one more thing before we close out. This is not my appeal for you to join a small group at your church. This is bigger than a sign-up sheet or a Wednesday night event. Those things can be good and beneficial. So I'm not buying or selling on a small group. But here's what I am saying. Allow God to lead you to the right community, the kind where you feel safe enough to let someone close enough to carry whatever you need carried with you. For some of us, the first step isn't finding the right people. The first step is asking ourselves why we built this wall in the first place. Because until we understand what we're protecting ourselves from, we'll keep reconstructing that thing, no matter how many small groups we join. For me, community has meant letting people in when everything in me wants to isolate. It has meant showing up through the hallelujahs and the help us Jesus moments. It has meant becoming comfortable being fully myself, flaws and all, and knowing that holding me up can sometimes look like correction done in love. Community cost me. It cost me my guard, but it gave me additional layers of protection. Me praying for myself is one soldier. My community praying with me and for me is an entire army. Here's what I pray that you walk away with today. That you are not designed for isolation. Not because independence is wrong, but because there are things God intends to do through relationship that He simply will not do alone. He wired you for witness, for someone to see your valley and stand with you in it, for a Ruth who stays when she could leave, for an Elizabeth who confirms what God has already told you in private. Listen, you don't have to build community overnight. I wouldn't suggest that you try that. And you don't have to tear down every wall at once. But maybe, just maybe, you can loosen one brick. Let one person a little bit closer. Maybe a little more Ruth to someone who's walking through their Naomi season. Because the right community doesn't require you to be fixed. It just requires you to show up. Hey, y'all. Thank you so much for being here for another episode of Exhaled Hope, the podcast. If this episode blessed you, please share it with your friends, your family, your community as you grow it, huh? And if you haven't already, go grab your Psalm 23 collection t-shirt that just dropped last week. I'll link all the good jazz in the show notes. And until next time, I'll see y'all next week. Deuces.